Holy cow, do we have some numbers. Polls. Last ones, too. I think they're, yeah, Ted's nodding. Just, yes, these are the last numbers that you're ever going to get until the November 4th election when you got to make some decisions. The numbers I'm really worried about tonight are the Dow. Oh! Can I have a moment of silence for my portfolio? Thank you. Holy mackerel. Don't freak out and start selling everything. This is the correction that we knew was coming. And then you get a little Ebola, and then you get a little bit of European stutter step, and you get this little kind of thing. So just everybody take a deep breath, and we'll all be fine. Welcome to my state of mind. See, I'm just trying to nurse you through what has been a tough. Can you imagine all of the gains for 2014 have been wiped out today? Yikes, I hate it when that happens. Ted Nesi's my co-host tonight, hardly my guest. They do a lot of good work at Eyewitness News on this polling stuff, and Ted's actually dug into some of the bond questions that you're going to face on November 4th, which most of you have no idea about, I know, so it's time for catch-up. Even guys like me have to do a little catch-up prior to the program on this stuff. So running down what we're going to look at, we're going to look at the numbers on the state direction, because you say a lot of things that don't make any sense. Sorry, you just do in these polls. I think the most important race November 4th is Attorney General, and we just aren't getting the kind of attention for it that I think is necessary. The governor's race, I got more data to break that down, and Ted can get into the undies of that election very, very easily. The treasurer's race is also, I think, a very, very important thing. Of course, these are all the statewide races known as the undercard, but still viable and important. So that's what's on store here for this evening. Let me welcome Ted in. That's the whole rundown because we got too much time. We got too little time to take care of everything. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Good advice on the market stuff.
Oh!
Keep contributing to your 401ks. It's cheaper right now.
Oh!
But
yes. Ouch.
Silver lining at best.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. You know, the closer you are to using that money, the more of a panic it is for people. So
I know you're just a year or two away now, right?
Don't you love the 30-somethings that think they own the world? All right, wrap up the show, Laura. We're all done. Thanks for watching.
Yeah,
I'm going to kick a little booty here. All right, let's, very good. That was a good one. State direction. Can we just start with an overall conversation on what people are saying when they throw up over these polls? Can we put the state direction poll over there? 56% of the electorate says wrong direction, which I guess is better than it was last year, right? It's a better number.
It's slowly come down. We've been doing this a few years now, and it was all the way up, that wrong direction number, 72% in May 2010, so that was a few months before the last gubernatorial election. But, I mean, a 56% wrong direction number is still pretty bad. It's only because it was so horrible a few years ago that it looks good at all. And the other side of the coin is not all the rest of the people say it's good. We only have 24% saying right direction. You just have some people not sure and some group of them saying it's about the same. So very few people really confident the state's going the right way.
What's it say about, now, we have to admit that the primary, Democratic primary had some shakeup. Some incumbents got booted out. But for the most part, we're going to see a lot of polling data here that supports the Democratic Party. Is it because the Republican Party has really no foundational comfort zone for people that they feel they can go there? Because if 56% of the electorate is upset about the way things are going, you'd think that a lot of them would be seeking alternative candidates.
I was surprised too at that. I mean, I'm getting less surprised the longer I cover Rhode Island politics because it just seems like something deep in the electorate in Rhode Island, they don't convert their frustration with the way the state is going into support for the opposition party. They maybe look for other people inside the Democratic Party, but it's striking. Frankly, no one in the poll is even within the margin of error of the Republican and independent challengers. But Alan Fung's at 6 points, but even that's a little outside of it. I mean, I thought Attorney General perhaps might be closer since Kilmartin's the only incumbent on here, but you know, I think just the Republican Party brand is so damaged in New England from the Bush years and everything getting more partisan nationally. And then, as you say, there's not a deep bench of candidates. There's not a deep grassroots large party, and so few people registered in the party to begin with. They always start at a big disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak against speeches that I have made in the past on radio and here that if you're looking for alternatives to leadership, you might have to look within the Democratic Party because of the fledgling nature of the Republican Party. At the same time, there are some pretty viable candidates, up and down the aisle that Republicans have put up despite the foundational problems of the party. And I wonder, we'll go down race by race, but I wonder.
This is a very strong, I think this is a strong, I know the numbers don't necessarily show up, but this is a fairly strong Republican ticket before you get to the poll numbers. You have all candidates who have some, almost all candidates who have some, who are decent at politics, who have some kind of background or something to make them go. They have good stories to tell. Most of them are decently funded, except for John Carlovali, and yet we see here that Democratic advantage, just a tidal wave that washes over them.
Yes. I think you said it best. There's a weird disconnect in the psychology of Rhode Island voters. They're mad, but they just almost enjoy being mad.
Sometimes I think politics and around, it's like the Democratic Party is almost a club that it doesn't really have any specific values or things it stands for. When you have everybody from, Peter Palumbo or, whoever else to Sheldon Whitehouse in it, from conservative Doc Corvese, people with such different views on the world and what should happen. And they're all under this tent of the Democratic Party, which almost makes it meaningless in terms of what they do as policy. It's a strange thing.
All right. I want to talk about the Attorney General's race because I think this is a really, really important race. And I think Ted and Tim did a really terrific 1 hour deal on Newsmakers. Straight up though, that's not getting primetime coverage on Channel 12.
It's true.
What up with that?
This is when it's tough to be the face of decisions that aren't mine. I'm not criticizing my bosses, but it's just the big races are the ones that get those big key primetime spots, and in the end it's a business, and Newsmakers did air a number of times and it's all online, but it's true, those don't get the same kind of play at night.
Yeah, look, all's fair in this discussion, and his boss is my boss in this, and this isn't about the boss. The television business is interesting. Television productions are expensive, and primetime changes in the lineup are expensive in terms of network and revenue advertising agreements. And so you can look at even the idea that polls, that nobody does polls anymore except Channel 12 and the Projo. So you have to give this company credit for making those investments in polling data. So, but it's just hard sometimes to see that the Attorney General's race, which is the top law enforcement officer with two viable candidates, one the incumbent, who I think is a complete hack, and the Republican, who is at least a contender. Regardless that I think he's a hack, the point is that the law enforcement officer's position here is a big one. So if not for prime time, please pay attention to this race, because as it goes, so goes a lot of important things in this state.
That's why, and that's why,
and to be honest with you, I can't be a hypocrite here. It's not like I've been talking about the race every night here either.
Yeah, well, that's also why we gave it an hour. Often with two candidates, we would just use the usual half-hour newsmaker slot, and we did ask Tim and I to blow it out to an hour because it's an incumbent, it's such an important job, and we weren't sure how much other. But I agree, it's tough, especially a year like this where there are so many competitive elections and so much going on. I know I've said to you before, I'm not looking for sympathy, but just there is a struggle sometimes to figure out how to allocate resources.
Yeah, I get it. So, okay, let's show at least, I think, a pivotal moment. Here's the polling data. Thank you, Laura. She's ahead of me, and she's getting this thing done tonight. 14-point spread, though. Dawson Hodgson, he would say, I'm well positioned because I'm not yet up. That's what he and Ernie Amonte say. You'll see the treasurer's race as well. You buy it?
To some extent. I mean, you can't, there's no denying.
When I say up, folks, I mean up with television ads.
Yeah, up on the air. I think when you're down 14 points 3 weeks out in a lower race that's not going to get as much attention, that's a tough spot to be in. They can absolutely find positives in here. Very close among independents who make up the biggest share of the Rhode Island electorate. It's always possible voters haven't closely tuned in yet. In this, Peter Kilmartin's under 50%. But, you would want it, I would think, to be closer than that in a race like this, only 3 weeks out. And they better have a that's the other problem for the Republicans, is that they just don't have as many operatives who are experienced in running winning campaigns, because they don't have a lot of winning campaigns. So they have to have a really good strategy to turn this around in the next couple of
The
weeks.
interesting thing is the more exposure to your good work on Newsmakers the other day, the more problems I think Peter Kilmartin has. Here's an excerpt as Tim and Ted were pounding away on the 38 Studios episode.
Who deceived you when you
Well, I believe that we had a package before us that said $150 million for an economic development program. I believe, and I have to be careful with my words because I can't talk about an ongoing criminal investigation, but I believe there are those parties who knew that some of that money was earmarked for 38 Studios.
First of all, it's $125 million, Peter, not that the facts and the numbers matter. Secondly, that he's spitting up, that by the way, that should have been front page news all over Kingdom Come, that he's finally admitting that he thinks that some people were in the know. He also, he said he was deceived. His expression is another reason why he should be able to understand he needs to withdraw from the investigation completely based on his former rep status and former leadership status prior to his vote on the authorization money for this. It is beyond me that he hasn't been pressed by that, by the world.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first question we asked there, and he says, yeah, I mean, it is striking to have someone who was in the legislature as all that went down and voted on the bill also playing a key part in that investigation. But it's his call because he's the Attorney General. And again, you see,
well, maybe he ought to go to Roger Williams Law School and sit in for one class and then do a little law ethics and have someone say, by the way, Peter, you got to go.
But as always, if voters were upset about that, you'd expect to see it more reflected in him having at least a smaller lead. And yet he's got a 14-point advantage to get the job again.
I think it's 38 fatigue. It's a complicated story, and he's been on a milk carton to protect his incumbency. All right, when we come back, the governor's race is very, very interesting, and we've got more data on it than you could choke down. Stay with us. Welcome back in. Ted Nesi is with me, WPRI.com. Make sure you read Nesi's notes. I do. I got to keep up with what's going on. Governor's race, really, really important, obviously, to everybody, and it has been a long conversation, no doubt. Here's the latest numbers, and again, these are the last polling numbers you'll see before the ultimate poll on November 4th. 42-36, Gina Raimondo with a 6-point lead, and Bob Healy with 8%. Think about it. Ken Block, in his first effort only to build the moderate party, could only muster near 6%. So you've got or 6.5%, whatever the number was. You've got 8% right now. I think he could crawl to 9 or 10, especially after next week on Tuesday when you have your primetime debate. He's a dynamic character, and every point he grabs, 2/3 of it comes from Alan Fung, no doubt in my mind.
Sure looks like it. I mean, Healy is strong with the same groups. Fung is strong with men, where Fung has a lead. Healy's grabbing 10% of the vote with male voters. Unions, where Fung is leading Raimondo. I know we're going to get to that.
Yeah,
Healy
well,
grabbing
let's go
12%.
down and show you narrate this as we go.
Sure.
The independents.
This is union households
this is
here.
union
So
households, okay.
on this one, you see right there, I mean, first of all, a Republican with a 12-point lead in union households is really striking, but of course we all know Gina Raimondo's angered a lot of those folks with the pension law. But then Bob Healy grabbing 12% of the union vote. I mean, you got to assume at least some of those votes could have gone to Alan Fung and buttressed his lead further there, but Healy's giving people another option as a protest vote.
Independents were in there somewhere. There we go, independent voters. A closer race, but still
Quite
reflective. Men like Alan.
Yeah, we don't have Healy in there. Again, this is, Fung up, 6 points with men, which is good, but Healy, it's not on the screen there, but has 10% of the male vote. Again, if those voters are leaning Fung and Healy wasn't there, you wonder if he could maybe have that at 45 or something.
Women are moving toward Gina. That was not a number that was good for her early on, so the chauvinistic women out there, and I mean that, I know it's oxymoronic in a way, but it is moving that direction.
Yeah, that's
a lot of mommy stuff on those
That
ads.
was striking. 17 points lead with women for Gina Raimondo. I mean, we've all talked in the primary about how she had trouble with women, but clearly she's resonated there with them. And you also have.
Well, when I say mommy, by the way, I don't mean to be sexist or chauvinistic about it. There was a lot of family stuff that she really loosened up that rigid impression. At the same time, she's getting more rigid with her communication. Have you seen anybody who's more robotic on jobs?
Every line.
Would you like breakfast? As long as it creates a job, would you like some coffee? Well, there's a lot of jobs involved with coffee. How about those Patriots? Well, boy, I'll tell you, those custodians that clean the stadium, jobs. Holy cow.
I'll give Fung some credit, though, too. I watched our package the night of the Autumn Fest. Both of them
They're
in
on the
their
jobs
10
thing.
seconds. Jobs,
Yeah, well,
jobs,
she's
jobs,
looking at
jobs.
the Autumn Fest like it's a bunch of people that never had a job. I went to the Autumn Fest, and I understand her point, but she looked a little tired. You know what I mean? It just.
Well, she even said, you look at the streets here.
Like,
and
look at the
everyone-
streets here. Look at the dredge of humanity in Woonsocket. These poor people. Why am I here? Jobs, jobs, jobs. Anyway, she was no Evita in that situation. Anyway, can we get to just real quick on the governor's race, the favorability ratings? She's managed to stay pretty popular, though, at 58%. Interestingly, Fung, look at this number, Laura, thank you, 64%. What do you make of that?
I think Alan Fung, I think there's lots of good news in here for Alan Fung. I mean, it's not good to be down 6 points necessarily. It's 3 weeks out. You don't have a lot of time, but I think this shows he's in very good shape. And if you dig in, the undecided voters, more than 70% of them have a favorable view of Fung. Just under 50% have a favorable view of Raimondo. So there's a lot of good news in here for Fung's campaign, but you know, we saw Angel Tavares was very popular, and he lost that primary to her. So we're going to have to watch how these campaigns are rolled out the next 3 weeks.
So it's almost insulting. Nice guy, but he can't be my governor. We'll see. 3 weeks is a long time.
Sure is.
She's going to play rope-a-dope jobs, jobs, jobs all the way home.
Jobs.
Unless you guys trip her up at the debate on Tuesday, which you'll want to watch at 7 o'clock on WPRI.com. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the other down card races, and there's a couple of bond questions that are going to rob your wallet. Stay with us. We'll take a look at some of the undercards. So I feel like I'm at WWF here with Ted Nesi, but we were talking during the break. Make a point, because what I didn't say is that I was surprised that Alan Fung was only 6 points down, but you were making a really good point to me during the break. Do that.
The downside for Alan Fung, I think, is that Gina Raimondo didn't have a great month.
Awful month.
The abortion stuff that blew up day after day. She was getting attacked on 38 Studios. She was being outspent by Alan Fung. You know, a lot of things went against Gina Raimondo, and yet she's still leading by 6 points, and every poll has shown her sitting on about 42%. So some people will say that could be her ceiling, but it could also be her floor, and she only needs to build a few more points.
She may have weathered a storm. Okay, let's go to what do we got here? The treasurer's race is also, I think, very important. The job has become more important. And Ernie Amonte, as an independent, he told me today on the radio that he thinks he's exactly where he needs to be, because he too is only getting up on the air. Yikes, against a Democratic, even an unknown Democratic guy, Mangaziner. He wins the primary by default, but's been on the air. He's got Bill Clinton in his ads, and he's 31, and all due respect to you young 30 guys, I don't know how the hell he's winning this thing. I got to tell you, El Monte is the most qualified guy for any job prorated in the statewide elections today, in my mind, and I don't know how he can make this up.
It's going to be tough. I think, you know, you see here part of the problem for Almonte was, you know, switching twice what he was doing. First, he's running for governor as a Democrat, then running for treasurer as a Democrat, then running for
but nobody
treasurer
knew who he was
independent.
then anyway.
Sure, but if he'd known from the start this was what he was driving toward, maybe he wouldn't have had to pivot so late when the thing was already congealing for Seth Magaziner in the primary. Yeah, again, just like Dawson Hodgson, there's reasons for Ernie Almonte to have some optimism. Independents, it's close. Men, it's close. But again, when you're down by double digits 3 weeks out in a race that won't get a ton of attention, you got a big challenge, so he's got a challenge ahead.
Dan McKee leads Catherine Taylor in the lieutenant gubernatorial race. He comes off a lot of momentum in that primary win, right?
Absolutely. I think, you know, she has to prove that this funky coalition she's building of moderate, chafyish Republicans, union folks, some liberals in some
all
cases.
All to build a health bureaucracy or something
all
that
this
people can't
different
figure
stuff.
out what the heck it
but,
is.
you know, I think we saw the AFL-CIO endorse her today. I think that's an interesting one to watch, and it's harder to predict because things are scrambled a bit.
It's only because they hate McKee for the charter schools.
It's
all
a
about
huge,
the charter
huge
schools. All right. Secretary of State John Calavalli has some hope, only because 1/3 of the electorate doesn't know what they're doing. It never heard of either one of the two. But Nellie Gorbea was a surprise winner in the primary, so I mean, I wouldn't bet against her now.
She's got an almost 500-to-1 financial advantage. I mean, he probably can't air any
He's
TV
got
ads.
great ideas. He really does.
Well, her campaign is taking him seriously because there's a clear contrast on that voter ID law. He wants to keep it, she wants to get rid of it, and that could take off. But again, very tough with all the other stuff going on.
It ain't water cooler discussion out there. Bond issues. Go to WPRI.com and read Ted's analysis on the bond issues. Really important. I mean, questions 1 and 2 are about Newport for the most part on the casino. Question 3 is about a constitutional convention. And question 4 is about $125 million for URI. Real quick one from the president of URI from the show the other day.
Basically, these are facilities, for the most part, that were completed between 1958 and 1963. So they're over 50 years old. A lot has changed in the intervening 50 years, as you can well imagine. And frankly, they're just not adequate anymore for the kind of teaching and research that needs to go on in a 21st century College of Engineering.
I know that I will vote yes. What's the pulse?
I think all these will probably pass because bond questions usually pass. They always have big organized campaigns. Almost $500,000 has been put together so far for these 4 bond questions. There's never an organized campaign against them.
But the arts question, which we're going to tackle tomorrow, we've got the people who are supporting that. They're earmarking money for just about every theater
Yeah,
that we've
millions
got
for
in town.
Trinity Rep, millions for Water Fire, and that could be interesting. I could see some people saying, no, these are private cultural organizations. They don't necessarily need debt-financed grants from the government that the taxpayers are going to pay for.
Yet they are one of the best things Rhode Island has to offer.
Right. So I assume bond questions pass. They usually do.
All right. What's your overall 10-second sum of where we are right now?
We have a bunch of interesting races to watch. I think there's a lot of these are competitive. I think the AG's one is one to watch, though tough road for Hodgson. And I think Alan Fung and Gina Raimondo, this thing could go either way.
All right. You got a good question coming up on Tuesday that...
Yes, can't reveal it, though everyone's watching your show.
That's right. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. We're only 2 minutes out, and Nesi's already tweeting that he's on the show tonight. He's fast with his fingers. By the way, you can be fast with your fingers. Just type me an email or send me a tweet yourself. That's how you do it. Or leave me a voicemail at 228-1886. This one comes from a former candidate for governor, I guess.
It's time for change. We need a moderate party. We need a third choice. And in this case, we definitely need Bob Healy to be governor.
Jess tells me that's Jim Spooner, who was the moderate party candidate for governor, who stepped away and gave you Bob Healy. All right, Jim, I understand you're feeling better. Good to hear that. We'll see you at noon tomorrow on WPRO. The president is coming to Rhode Island on schedule, I guess. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more, and we'll talk about the arts bond question tomorrow night, too, as well. You have a good night. Good night.